Hey guys, today we are still reading A is for America, about our nation's symbols and things that remind us of America. We are on the letter L. While Abraham Lincoln was president, the United States was in danger of splitting into two countries. In 1863, he issued the Emancipation Proclamation, which ended slavery. So Abraham Lincoln, ended slavery. For keeping the nation together in such troubled times, many historians believe that Abraham Lincoln was the greatest president in history. In this temple, as in the hearts of the people for whom he saved, the memory of Abraham Lincoln is enshrined forever. That must be what's engraved there. Okay, and so this is a carving there, a statue of Abraham Lincoln, as you can see. Okay, Abraham Lincoln gets all of L. It's elementary, you see. He held us all together and at the same time set us free. His memorial, well, I called it a statue, but yes, it's a memorial, in Washington makes him a giant of a man. Or look upon a smaller one, the penny in your hand. So boys and girls, when you look at a penny, I want you to look at the front of it, okay? Because on the front of a penny, remember penny's copper, so when you look at the front of the penny, that is Abraham Lincoln. And Abraham Lincoln is the president who issued the Emancipation Proclamation, and that ended slavery. So he put a stop to it, and he said slavery is not fair, it's not right, and we're going to end it. There's pictured penny right there. M is for Mayflower. Minutemen, remember we talked about the Minutemen who are ready to go to fight in a minute. Motown, Manatee. M is for Mickey Mantle, who's a ball player. Mickey Mouse, Monopoly. M can seem so mighty when it's a river rolling by. Mississippi, Mississippi. The Mississippi River. It's a river. Okay. One of the greatest baseball players ever, Mickey Mantle, was named for another great player, Mickey Cochran. The manatee is sometimes called a sea cow. The Mississippi River is the longest river in the U.S., stretching from Lake Itasca, Minnesota, to just south of New Orleans, Louisiana. Motown introduced the world to many amazing, talented African-American musicians and performers. Now we're on N. Perhaps the country's most beloved artist, Norman Rockwell, painted everyday scenes of American life. More than 400 Native Americans from the Navajo tribe helped the United States win World War II with the Navajo language. Troop movements and battle plans were communicated through Navajo code talkers. The enemy was unable to decipher what the code talkers were saying. In 1969, the entire world watched as Neil Armstrong became the first man to set foot on the moon. We talked about that, didn't we, guys? Joining him on the Apollo 11 mission, we talked about that, were Buzz Aldrin and Michael Collins. Remember us studying about that? All right. So for N, they're talking about Neil Armstrong. And remember, they're setting the flag there on the moon. And remember that the moon, is there air and oxygen blowing there on the moon? Why does it look like the flag's waving? Is the flag really waving around? No. They said they've got some wire or something in it to make it look like it is. But it's not really, is it? Because there's no oxygen, nothing going on out there in outer space. Okay, so there's Neil Armstrong. Norman Rockwell, Niagara Falls. A night in New Orleans. I'm sorry. I'm trying to move in my position and I can't read sideways. Let me just back up. Norman Rockwell, Niagara Falls, that's in Canada. so go straight up north of the United States. A night in New Mexico, New Orleans, and Native American. N is for Navajo, and NASA, remember NASA has to do with space, and Neil Armstrong, who reached the moon to find that it was one small step for man and one giant leap for mankind. The Old West, the OK Corral, the Oregon Trail, an old ornery outlaw, an owl on a rail, Old Faithful, remember the geyser, Old Glory, and good old Oreos, and overlooking the Ozarks, where the occasional opossum goes. The OK Corral was the site of a famous gunfight in Tombstone, Arizona in 1881. The Oregon Trail was actually a series of trails that allowed settlers to move from the eastern half of the country to the western half. Old Glory is a nickname for the U.S. flag. So when you think of Old Glory is what they would call the U.S. flag. And they already talked about Old Faithful, didn't they? But it was the geyser, remember? It always erupts at the same time every day, so they call it Old Faithful. We talked about Old Faithful. Pikes Peak, this is somewhere I'd like to visit. Pikes Peak, it's out west towards, I think it's in Colorado, maybe. Montana, Colorado, one of those states. It says Pikes Peak was named for Zebulon Pike, whose only attempt at climbing the mountain was unsuccessful due to a storm. So Pikes Peak is a really super duper tall mountain. Peanut butter was just one of more than 300 uses for peanuts invented by George Washington Carver. Rosa Parks, there's Rosa Parks. She helped the nation understand that rights were for everyone, regardless of their skin or color. Remember how we talked about, and then everybody, Martin Luther King Jr., and how everybody wanted to be treated equally. Pikes Peak and peanut butter, that's the letter P. Plymouth Rock and Pilgrims at Peril on the Sea. Rosa Parks, parades, popcorn in a pan. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where it all began. Q is for the quill that John Hancock used to place his quite creative signature in a most important place. It's for the American quarter. Remember, quarter's 25 cents. And the bob white quail. And the quilts that kept the Quakers warm in a Pennsylvania gale. John Hancock was the president of the Second Continental Congress, which drew up the Declaration of Independence. His large and unique signature on the Declaration of Independence became so famous that today someone may request your signature by asking for your John Hancock. If you've ever heard somebody say your John Hancock signature, means your signature. He wrote really big. His large, unique signature. Many Quakers came to America seeking religious freedom. Many settled in Pennsylvania, which was named for a Quaker, William Penn. A remote reach of the Rockies, the reflection of Mount Rainier, the regal ridge of Mount Rushmore. Now, Mount Rushmore is down here with all the presidents, well, a bunch of their presidents' faces are carved into the mountainside. That's really cool looking. The ride of Paul Revere. The Roosevelts, Franklin and Teddy Roosevelt. Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth's the ball player up here. Rock and roll. Rock and roll, there's your record. Rosie the Riveter, the Rio Grande, and remember the Alamo. The Rocky Mountains stretch from New Mexico to Alaska. The faces of 4 presidents are carved on Mount Rushmore. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, and Theodore Roosevelt. Those 4 faces of the presidents are carved into there. Rosie Riveter symbolizes the role that women played in keeping the USA strong during World War II. So during World War II, this picture kind of symbolized women are going to keep America strong. Old Glory isn't the old nickname for the U.S. flag. It's also known as the Stars and Stripes. So when you see it, it's called Stars and Stripes. It's called Old Glory. It's called American flag. There are 13 stripes on the flag, one for each of the original colonies. We talked about that yesterday. And there are 50 stars on the flag, one for each state, because we got 50 states. We talked about that too. Susan B. Anthony crusaded for women's rights, including the right to vote, because women got to vote. Remember, at first, women could not vote, could they? Sitting Bull was a great chief of the Sioux Indians. So here's Sitting Bull. He was a great chief of the Sioux Indians. So that's for S. Stand and salute the Stars and Stripes. Remember, Stars and Stripes is your flag. A symbol to celebrate. A stripe for each of the colonies and a star for every state. Susan B. Anthony, Sierra Nevada, a steam locomotive train, Sitting Bull, and Samuel Clemens, better known as Mark Twain. You guys heard of Mark Twain? All right. T. A T is tall as Texas for Thanksgiving and telephone. Harry S. Truman, Harriet Tubman, and trips to the Twilight Zone. Times Square on New Year's Eve. A tasty Tootsie Roll, turning timber into a tall and towering totem pole. Those are T's. The tradition of Thanksgiving began with the Pilgrims. Before the United States was even a country, it's now celebrated on the fourth Thursday of November. So before the United States even became a country, they began the tradition of Thanksgiving with the Pilgrims, remember? We've talked about that at Thanksgiving time, didn't we? Born into slavery, Harriet Tubman, there's a picture of Harriet Tubman, she freed herself and then worked to free many, many others. Times Square in New York City hosts the world's most famous New Year's Eve party every December 31st. So they have a big New Year's Eve party. You can watch that on TV. Remember the ball drops, New Year's Eve party? I don't know if you guys stay awake for that or not. Probably not. Sometimes I fall asleep too. Now we're at U. The name Utah, that's a state, comes from a Native American word meaning people of the mountains. Ulysses S. Grant was the commander of the Union Army in the Civil War. After the war, he became the country's 18th president. Written by Harriet Beecher Stowe, Uncle Tom's Cabin taught much of the nation about slavery. So that book taught a lot about slavery. U takes us up to Utah, unafraid of an upcoming storm. It's undeniably Ulysses S. Grant in his Union uniform. It's also Uncle Tom's Cabin, which helped us understand the uncommon things we must uphold for dear Uncle Sam. V is for the veterans and the valor they displayed in vying for vital victories and the sacrifices they made. V is for Virginia and Vermont and Vikings too. It seems they got here long before Columbus was able to. And this is a memorial also where it has a picture of the soldiers holding the flag. Okay, that's a memorial. It says, veterans are people who have served their country in the armed forces. Many people gave their lives fighting for the United States of America. And a lot of you probably have family members who gave their lives fighting, or you know people who gave their lives fighting. But we celebrate, we have Veterans Day, where we remember those people. We also have Memorial Day, where we remember people who have served or are serving in our armed forces. 4 of the first 5 presidents were born in Virginia: George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, and James Monroe. While Christopher Columbus often gets the credit, it's now believed that Viking Leif Erikson was the first European to reach North America. After leading the